Europe and other regions ambayo tuko nao ni giant African land snails. Totally they are for meat, but the snail has a lot of benefits because apart from the meat, the slime is also beneficial. We also have medicines made from the slime for TB. We usually sell the snails in cages. For the live ones, we usually sell at a minimum of 2,000 per kilogram. But for the frozen one, we sell at a minimum of 3,000 Kenya shillings.
So join me this Sunday to learn more about snail farming.
How are you this particular morning? It is the 24th of July and it is a Wednesday. You're just waking up to New Dawn here on K24 TV. Thank you so much for trusting us this morning to try to bring you up to date with the news-making headlines across the country and to set the agenda of the day. Today, we'll be taking a look at the state of the nation. How does it look like on matters economy, matters politics, and also social issues, especially with the issues to do with demonstrations that have rocked different parts of the country as far as anti-government protests are concerned. Yesterday, we did witness youth taking to the street protesting against the government, but the protests this time around were quite different, whereby we saw youth supporting the government also taking to the streets, while others who are not supporting the government also taking to the streets. Other things that have been making headlines has to do with the issue of cabinet secretary nominees. Aden Duale switched to the Ministry of Environment as Soipan Tuya takes over the Ministry of Defense. This is if Parliament approves their nomination after vetting. We have so much to look at and unpack this particular morning. The state of the nation is the center of attention here on K24 New Dawn. My name is Brian Amuai, and guide us on our socials at Amuai Brian, that is on X at K24 TV. We are also live on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll be welcoming your feedback on those particular social platforms as we continue with the program this particular morning. Do engage us, tell us where you are watching from and what you think about the state of the nation from where you sit. What is the current state of the nation? But first, we do want to take a look at the news-making headlines this morning and what you're waking up to and what is shaping the agenda of the day. Let's begin. Now, heavy security presence and restrictions were put in place at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as those who accompanied or were receiving passengers were restricted from accessing the airport. This followed warnings from the National Police Service that unauthorized persons planning to storm JKIA will be dealt with. And as Chimea now reports, protesters who are adamant to walk to JKIA despite the warnings in the latest shift in anti-government protests.
Kuenda kuingia kwa kiwanja ya ndege huko na hujapata ruhusa ya kuingia huko haitakubalika.
It is a warning that landed on deaf ears as protesters were determined to get to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA. At Bunyala Road from the Central Business District, protesters adamantly began making their way to JKIA. However, they were met with the full wrath of police as tear gas canisters were lobbied against them. The circumstances were similar along the Outer Ring Road. Police dispersing protesters, removing stones and putting off lit tires to pave way for motorists. At JKIA, security was heightened, with police manning different entry and exit points at the airport. Access to drop-offs and pickups were limited, as even those who had accompanied or were expecting passengers were not allowed in past the main fast entry point, contrary to normal operations where people were permitted to make way until outside the various terminals.
Nilikuwa natoka Canada, ilikuwa afike huko saa 2 asubuhi na ikawa tulifika mahali pale tukaambiwa kwamba tuwezi ingia na tungoje kwanza, tungoje tusubirie nje. So tukikaa hapo tukikafika maskari wakakuja wakatufukuza, tukamwambia tuwezi ingia hapo.
Nilikuwa nimeleta hapa mwenzangu pia kukuja kumlaki mwenzake, na pia sababu nyingine ni kwamba nilikuwa nimekuja pia lazima tuandamane.
Tumetoka tao, situation tao pale ilikuwa cool, security ilikuwa tight. Kufika hapa hivi man, imekuwa disappointment, but I know Gen Z bado tutamake.
Mmoja wetu ambaye ni mtoto wetu alikuwa ametoka US aka drop in Dubai, but kufika kwa airport tumeambiwa hatuwezi ingia, so inabidi turudi tumngojee mahali.
Nilikuwa nimeenda kuchukua kijana yangu ambaye amekaa nje kwa muda. Kufika hapo kwa gate nimeambiwa siwezi kuingia, nitafute mahali nje ningojee, ni kwa sababu ya usalama. Amekaa Dubai kwa sababu ya hii issue ya maandamano. Alifaa kufika Monday na mpaka wa leo hajafika, so nilikuwa na matumaini ya kumuona leo.
And I brought my brother in the morning. He was traveling to MBA, and unfortunately I couldn't get in because I didn't have the gate pass. I didn't have a traveling ticket today because they'd say that there are a lot of restriction in the area for today, and the only people that are allowed to get inside the airport is if maybe you're delivering some goods.
At the primary screening yard, armed officers kept vigil. Only authorized staff had an easy passage. Those from other companies had to produce their clearance passes, and those traveling had to produce their tickets at the first main entry before proceeding, unlike the usual times where passengers produce their tickets at the verification point. Kenya Airports Authority, KAA, had issued an advisory to travelers to arrive 4 hours before their departure time, as traffic disruptions were anticipated on major roads leading to JKIA. Passengers were also told to expect delays in their departure and arrival times. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Now questions emerge over boda scene in Nairobi CBD carrying pro-government banners. This saw some Kenyans complain of being robbed by the riders. Now with CBD, boda operators deny knowing them, even attacking some for allegedly robbing residents and burning their motorbikes. Some unanswered questions include who sponsored the riders and where and what were their instructions. This is a story produced by David Kagina.
Early morning on the Tuesday of protests, security was tightened in every corner of the city and there were no signs of protesters. However, a group of boda riders emerged. The riders carried placards demanding that President William Ruto be given more time to fulfill the youth's demands. Then some of the boda riders got off in areas where there were police officers. The police did not seem to take any action against them. At one point, the police were escorting them and everything seemed calm. However, as we followed them, we met citizens complaining of being robbed. These complaints led to people taking to the streets and roughing up the boda riders.
Kijana amekuja na ametoka kwa pikipiki akachukua bag yangu na ametoroka nayo. Saa hii tu hapa kwa kona. Nimeibiwa bag na iko na kila kitu, simu, passport yangu, kila kitu hadi ID.
They are stealing phones, they are stealing and the policemen are just looking at them. They are not even doing anything.
Clearly the way things are, these are hired people who have been brought here watutishie sisi. As you can see, wanatuibia simu. The police are not even throwing tear gas at them as they used to do to peaceful demonstrators. Currently, ndio wanazunguka wanatuibia simu.
They were then attacked by citizens and other boda service providers in the heart of Nairobi. 2 were seriously injured and 2 motorbikes burned.
Kwanza hivyo hata wapigwa tear gas. Sisi wenye tunaandamana na amani tunapigwa tear gas.
Tumewaambia parliament toeni hao watu hapa. Wananyamaza, wataki kuwatoa.
Kwa sababu watu ambao wanalipwa kupingana na vijana wenye wanafanya kazi ambao wamejitolea kwa sababu ya kusaidia Kenya au si wenzetu.
But questions arise. Where did they come from? It is reported that they were seen at a petrol station where they were refueling, yet the sponsor was unknown. At one point, they were seen surrounding a Range Rover vehicle in one of the streets within the CBD. Then they proceeded straight to the city center. Who were they? Who sponsored them? And where did these hooligans come from?
There were people on motorbikes. There were people on motorbikes.
When the group was dispersed, that's when the protests began. Youths marched from city towards JKIA grounds. Some remained in the city. David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
Now, tens of protesters have been arrested in Kajiado, Kwale and Kisumu counties for participating in the anti-government countrywide protests. And as Media Kisienya reports, major highways like the Nairobi, Namanga and Kisumu-Nairobi were paralyzed for the better part of the day as demonstrators engaged police in running battles.
It's 1 month down the line since the onset of the anti-government protest. And as this week's protest kicked off today, this was the situation, running battles between the police and protesters. In Kwale County, at least 3 people were arrested shortly after purchasing vuvuzelas before embarking on what they termed as peaceful protest.
I have not been charged. How do you arrest someone of buying vuvuzela? That is her right. Hiyo nguvu wako nayo kushika watu wakiprotest, watumie nguvu kushika vijana mapanga. Ama
right ya kuprotest iko protected very well under the constitution. I don't see why somebody should be arrested, awekwe ndani for no reasons, asichajiwe. The OCS is here, tunamwambia our charge. We have cash bail, tuko tayari kutoa. Our release, it is their right to be released. Ama awapeleke kotini. Anawashika, anaweka huko ndani. Those are threats.
In Kitengela, Kajiado County, tens of protesters were arrested. Heavy presence of KDF, prison officers and the police was spread across the town. And as the police took turns to deal with the protesters, business owners took chance to guard their premises. In Machakos County, the situation was no different. Bonfires were lit along the Machakos-Kitui Road, paralyzing transport activities. And in Kisumu County, at least 2 protesters were arrested during the long day protest. Business and transport activities were also paralyzed.
Siku ya Ruto kitu amesema sijafurahia, ati yako tayari kubambana na sisi kama vijana. Na sisi ni viongozi wa kesho. Kama mimi mwenyewe nilikuwa nakula githeri pale, polisi anakuja ananipiga rungu ya mguu. Sasa mimi nimemfanyia nini?
He is playing abracadabra game with the youth. We are the people who voted in for him, and he used us, confusing us with wheelbarrow. Now, the same way Mike Mbuvi Sonko, former governor of Nairobi, and Waititu, the way they were impeached and they left power, the same way we want the MPs who voted yes to vote him out.
I have come today carrying my constitution, and I'm asking you, the president, implement this constitution. This is the constitution of Kenya. Implement it to its fullest. Follow it to its fullest. You are calling us to a dialogue. The dialogue that we are telling you to do is to implement the constitution of Kenya. And if you are unable to do that, then Mr. President, resign.
The situation was similar in Mombasa County, where Gen Z demonstrators took to the streets in opposition of the new cabinet nominees and the president's sentiments on crushing the demos. Protesters have, however, vowed to continue with the weekly demos until their demands are met.
We gave him time. He disbanded the cabinet. The same people who the public are complaining about, they are back for the appointments. So, what extra time do we need?
Yeah, alisema enough is enough. Na yeye si constitution, yeye ni custodian wa constitution. Na constitution inatukubalia kuandamana kwa amani.
Leo ni kwa maandamano kutetea haki zetu. And apart from that, this guy has been giving us promises. Empty promises.
Watoto wakisikizwa na makanisa isungumbuze, iseme mbaya kile kinaendelea. Makanisa yaache kuwekwa mifukoni.
Media Kisienya, K24 TV.
Now, details have emerged indicating that India's largest airport infrastructure company has allegedly secured a lease of 30 years to take ownership of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. While in an interview in a local media house, Kisii Senator Richard Onyonka has petitioned the Senate Committee on Roads and Transport to issue a statement on how the purported deal was undertaken with the Adani, allegedly granting them the mandate to operate JKIA under a build-operate and transfer model.
Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, formerly called Embakasi Airport, and Nairobi International Airport, is Kenya's largest aviation facility and the busiest airport in East Africa. Its importance as an aviation center makes it the pacesetter for other airports in the region. In 2023, KRA Customs and Border Control CNBC Department collected approximately 49.06 billion shillings against a target of 46.991 billion shillings. The figures could potentially attract investors. The recent investor, though, seems to have started on a wrong footing. This as details emerge on the alleged acquisition of the facility without proper procedure. Kisii Senator Richard Onyonka has stirred up a conversation around the ownership of JKIA. Onyonka says Kenya Airports Authority KAA has entered into a deal to lease JKIA to an Indian firm, Adani Airport Holdings Limited. In what seemed to be a deal that was happening away from the public eye, Onyonka spilled it, even petitioning Senate Committee on Roads and Transport to issue a statement on how the purported deal was undertaken. He has also called for the Senate to be provided with documentation from KAA board meeting on July 15, 2024, including the notice of agenda, meetings and resolution. The senator also expressed concerns about the government's alleged plans to provide Adani Commercial with free land for city-side development on public land. He highlighted potential land issues that could arise in areas surrounding JKIA due to such developments. Adani is India's largest airport infrastructure company, accounting for 25% of passengers' footfalls and 33% of India's air cargo traffic. Conversation around KQ wanting to take over JKIA started in 2019, even though the chair Michael Joseph said they had considered it, but it was just an option.
Of course, it was one of the options that we considered 3 years ago when we went through the financial restructuring. It was not an option that we wanted to take, but we said it's one. But we obviously never considered that we would do it. And going forward, it is still not an option.
Meanwhile, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, while appearing before the National Assembly Budget and Appropriations Committee, dismissed claims of an intended sale of JKIA to a foreign investor, adding that a sale of such high-value asset can only be done after public memoranda and approval by Parliament.
Let me discount immediately that the airport, Jomo Kenyatta Airport, is not on sale.
Operated by Kenya Airports Authority, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is served by airlines with direct connections to Europe, the Middle East, Asia and Africa. Linda Koskei, K24 TV.
Now, Wiper Party has denied reports that it is in talks with President William Ruto to form a government of national unity. On its part, through a statement, however, ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna said that the party does not have any political arrangements with the current regime, adding that any member of the ODM party who wants to join President Ruto's cabinet will be doing so without the approval and support of the party. Ruby Mondi tells us more.
The Wiper Party, through its Secretary General Shakil Abdallah, has noted with concern continued attempts to misinterpret its position on the ongoing crisis in the country and specifically on the proposed national dialogue to resolve the same.
Kuna watu wachache ndio wanayumba yumba, lakini si Raila. Watu wachache kidogo, wachache tu. Mapua mbili tatu. Mapua mbili tatu ndio inayumba yumba. Lakini si Raila Amolo Odinga.
Earlier today, the party also indicated not to have any political arrangements with the current regime, saying that any member of ODM who wishes to join President Ruto's cabinet will be doing so without the support of the party.
Aende peke yake, awache kudrag Azimio na awache kudrag majina za watu wa Azimio. Tunasema party leader wetu waheshimiwe kwa sababu he is a national leader. Na vile vile tunapongeza msimamo wa Mheshimiwa Raila kwa kupindua msimamo wake kusema hataki kuungana na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza.
On its part, ODM, through its Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, in a statement said the party remains committed to its principles and the ongoing struggle for a better Kenya, dismissing the narrative created to make it look like ODM is desperate to join the government.
Na tunapongeza ile statement imetolewa leo na ODM ya kwamba wale wanaotaka kwenda waende peke yao, na sisi tunawashinikiza wanaotaka kwenda waende kivyao kama individuals. Waache kugawanya Azimio, waache kugawanya members wetu. Wao wana uwezo wa kwenda kivyao, lakini sisi tuko imara na hatutageuka, and we are not boarding in the existing government.
Last week, ODM listed at least 4 conditions they wanted implemented before they have any talks, including compensation to the families of the victims of extrajudicial executions and persons injured by the state since last year, and release all persons in custody and termination of all cases related to protests.
Hii ni mambo ya leadership, mismanagement, corruption. Tunataka president atoke kimasomaso, awaeleze wa Kenya zile issues ambazo amepatiwa, atazitackle vipi, atazitackle lini, na yale anaweza kufanya afanye, na yale hawezi aambie wananchi. Hiyo tunataka transparency, hatutaki mambo mengi.
On his part, Homa Bay Town Member of Parliament Opondo Peter Kaluma has called on President Ruto to ensure the Luo community is included in the CS appointments.
Everybody is in, except Luos. Yet Luos also pay taxes. Honorable Speaker, I therefore want to congratulate the President for the appointment, but request the President that within the week, as soon as tomorrow, we want to see those other appointments Baba was to forward to him. And we want all of them approved. And Honorable Speaker, if that can happen, then we are going to push this thing very fast. We cannot leave anybody out.
Robbie Omondi, K24.
Now, President William Ruto has, in a last-minute resolution, reshuffled Soipan Tuya to the Defense CS nominee, while Aden Duale has been moved to the Environment docket. The fate of Rebecca Miano, who was nominated to become the first woman Attorney General, however, remains unknown after her name was omitted in the message to Parliament by the head of state. Joel Chacha now reports on what transpired as Parliament resumed its sitting after a 3-week recess.
With no reason cited in a last-minute cabinet reshuffle just 3 days after President William Ruto unveiled the first batch of 11 members of his cabinet, following his decision to dismiss the entire maiden cabinet, Soipan Tuya has now been nominated for the Defense Cabinet Secretary position, while Aden Duale has been moved to the Environment docket.
Honorable Rosalinda Soipan Tuya, AGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Defense. Honorable Aden Bare Duale, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry.
They normally say in Parliament, what you communicate is what is communicated, and that is what is final. But I'm not sure whether this list is the same one, Mr. Speaker. We cannot change your records in Parliament, but we are really in doubt whether this is the real one. But we shall wait.
Why the list you have read to us is different from what the President read? We are starting from a very weak point on that basis alone, Mr. Speaker.
What is important is the record that comes to this House. And the record that has arrived in this House is what I have read to you.
Duale, through his X account, has expressed gratitude to the head of state while referring to the Holy Book of Quran that what you like might not be good and what you don't like might be good. Eyebrows have been raised as the just nominated Attorney General Rebecca Miano, who will become the first AG if approved by Parliament, with her name missing in the communication from President Ruto to the National Assembly.
This is the House of Parliament.
Her fate now hangs in the balance, or rather is unknown. However, she served previously in the trade docket after she was reshuffled from the EAC docket.
Therefore, imperative that the Committee on Appointments immediately commences the process of consideration of the nominees. The Committee on Appointments is expected to immediately notify the nominees and the general public, commence the necessary approval hearings, and table its report in the House soonest.
Parliament resumed its sittings for the first time today after Parliament proceeded on a 3-week recess, following a deadly invasion by the Gen Z against the Finance Bill 2024.
If the President does not assent to a bill,
the Finance Committee of the National Assembly will on Wednesday table its report of withdrawal of the bill in its entirety. Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
All right, that's what you're waking up to this particular morning as far as news is concerned. You are now informed on the state of the nation and affairs of this particular country, what transpired yesterday, what we expect to be happening today, and what is important to you as a citizen of this particular nation. And also, some of the stories that we've run today will be forming the basis of our conversation as we look at what direction this nation is taking as we take stock of the nation. Now, our question that we are asking this particular morning is, what is the real state of this particular country? Are we on the right trajectory or are we on the wrong trajectory? And if at all we are on the wrong trajectory, how do we get back to the right trajectory? Now, I'll be speaking to Dr. Kanyuthia Mutunga, who is the Member of Parliament, Tigania West. Thank you so much for making time. And also Dr. Hassan, who is a leadership and governance expert. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with this one. I want to take a break, but a second. Are we on the right trajectory as a nation? What's the real state of the nation?
I believe the nation is on the right trajectory.
It is on the right trajectory.
Apart from just a little bit of confusion, which is normal. These things happen and things get back on track.
Okay. So some people will look at that and say, okay, we are not doing well. We need to revisit whatever is happening in the country. Let me come to you.
No, with the current status of the nation, I don't think if we are heading to the right direction.
We are not heading to the right direction.
Both from the government perspective and from the demonstrators' perspective.
Okay.
So there are a number of things that we need to unearth so that the government can look at it. And also, there are quite a number of things that needs to be relooked so that the agency or the demonstrators can revisit their way of doing things. Otherwise, government cannot be run in a way that we are currently seeing, and demonstrations don't last in the way we are seeing.
Now, all that particular point will be coming to that conversation later on in detail. And also we'll be speaking to Josephine Wanjiru, who is a youth and gender activist. Engage us on our socials at Amoy Brian, that is on X, at K24 TV, across social media platforms. What is the real state of the nation?